On today's show, we've got part 2 of the official Locked On NHL mock draft. We'll talk about all the prospects that are Locked On team selected on today's show.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hattie Kalakash, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, with Sebastian Hyde, Director of European Scouting and Head Scout for Dobber Prospects. And on today's show, we've got part 2 of the official Locked On NHL mock draft. Yesterday, we broke down picks 1 through 16. On today's show, we'll break down picks 17 through 32. We'll talk about all the prospects that our teams picked up in detail. So the way the Locked On mock draft works is we have a podcast for each NHL team. All the podcast hosts from NHL teams got together and picked for their respective teams. That's how the mock draft works. So we'll break down who our Locked On hosts picked for picks 17 through 32. The way we'll break this down, 17 through 21 in the first segment, 22 through 27 in the second, and then 28 through 32 in the final segment. Before we get into any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get up to $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Leave us a comment letting us know what you think of the podcast, what you think of the episode, and what you think of the mock draft. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, make sure to make us your first listen of the day. And at 17th overall, we have Locked On Capitals picking Igor Chernyshov, the big left winger out of Dynamo Moscow in the KHL/MHL. He's played in both levels. Talk me through his game. You've scouted him all year. He's one of the first prospects I scouted for the draft, but you know him fairly well as Director of European Scouting. Talk me through his game.
Yeah, he's a ton of fun. This is a really skilled, big, powerful winger who is as good of a finisher as he is a defensive player. He gets involved in all three zones. He's really, really good in transition. It's where he's shown most brightly at the KHL level was in his defensive zone play and in sparking the breakout, both through the defensive and neutral zones. He's a really good shooter, has a really heavy release. He can score from a variety of places in the offensive zone, whether it be the net front or from medium to long range. He has a deceptive release, a good curl and drag, very powerful shot, as I mentioned. Playmaking needs some work, and being able to layer some deception into that, because he's a great puck handler, but being able to actually use that to open up playmaking opportunities for him is something that hasn't really been worked out just as of yet. But there's still some runway with his development, which is really exciting, and he's so impactful in all three zones, especially for a team that has no fright of drafting Russian-based players like the Capitals. I think Igor Chernyshov makes a ton of sense and has significant top six upside to boot.
Yeah, we both have him higher in our rankings, so this is a great fit. We move on to number 18 in our rankings, and Liam Greentree is selected here at 18th overall to the Windsor Spitfires. Great selection here at 18th overall by the Locked On Blackhawks podcast. Greentree makes a ton of sense as well. After adding Ivan Demidov, you'd half expect the Blackhawks to go with a defenseman here, especially a right-handed defenseman. But in terms of options, I don't think there's anyone left on the board that I would take this high. We have Levshinov, Parekh, Yakimchuk, and Yurachek off the board. There aren't a lot of selections here at 18 that make a ton of sense. So if you're going for a forward, Liam Greentree has the upside here to be a good selection at 18. Really projectable player in terms of his hockey sense, his awareness, his ability to make good decisions. He's a player who passes the puck not just to get a primary assist or create a dangerous chance. He passes with the intent of improving the condition of the puck, even when those passes are just really simple low to high passes, or kind of slips under sticks in transition on cutbacks, that kind of stuff. I've grown to really, really like his playmaking game as the season gone on. But the foundations of his game is still his goal scoring and stick handling ability. He's a human highlight reel with a really, really good shot, gets to dangerous areas often. The main issue with Greentree, and I think for me, the real only issue that I have with him is the skating ability, because the skating ability actually causes the other problems I have with this game, the lack of energy, the struggle in terms of dynamism and kind of evading kind of physical scenarios. He struggles with that mainly because there's a lot of wasted energy that goes into each stride. So he gets to the end of a shift, he's burnt. I think if you work on the skating, the energy is going to be there. The effort level is going to be there. He's not going to cut as many corners. he's going to be a really effective player because when he's involved in play defensively, he makes really good decisions. So I like this pick at 18th overall. For Locked On Blackhawks. At 19th overall, we have the Locked On Golden Knights selecting Trevor Connelly of the Tri-City Storm. He's finally off the board. He has a skill set to be a top 15 pick, but there are a lot of questions in this game, right? Like, this is a prospect who on and off the ice has some concerns.
For sure. Let's talk about the on ice stuff first. He's a dynamic player with the puck on his stick, but he also tries to do everything with the puck on his stick. He wants to put the finishing touches on every play that he gets involved in or creates. He wants to make the final pass to the slot for the primary assist. He wants to score the goal. He's not a player that incrementally builds play up the ice, which is a very junior style of play and an approach to hockey. And Trevor Connelly is going to have to learn how to keep his puck touches shorter, play more give and go style play with more pace than just raw dynamism all the time. Off the ice, there's a fair amount of concerns with Trevor Connelly, and on the ice, the decision-making's also had is fair share of woes. At the U18 World Championships in the gold medal game, he cost the United States the third period when they were at a tied game with Team Canada by taking a 5-minute major on a really unnecessary and not thought out at all physical implication and boarding a player into the boards. I think it was Ryder Ritchie, and he got sent off for the game misconduct, and Canada absolutely took that power play by the horns and won the game with ease from that point onwards. So definitely some questions with Trevor Connelly. The upside here is of a dynamic top line offensive driver, even maybe, the floor is outside the NHL. So a really wide range of possible outcomes with this development, and the Vegas Golden Knights would be a very interesting place for him to develop because this is not a typical Golden Knights style of pick, and I'd be very interested to see how they kind of handled his development. But very fascinating swing here at 19th overall.
For sure. On skill alone, there's absolute grounds for this at 19th overall. This is exactly where I have him ranked. It's just there's a lot of questions about the on and off ice stuff that make him a really risky pick. But if any team's going to take a big risk at 19th overall, I'm kind of surprised it's the Golden Knights. But at the same time, they need upside in their pool. So this one makes sense a tiny bit. At 20th overall, we have the New York Islanders making their selection. And the 20th pick selected by the Locked On Isles podcast is Tarek Parasak of the Prince George Cougars, a personal favorite of mine. I'm really happy to see him go at 20 here. One of the most intelligent players in this draft. For me, a top 3 in terms of smarts in this class. His ability to support play, his ability to anticipate play and make reads in the offensive zone, next to none. I really like his skating is bad. He always gets to pucks first on retrievals. He always gets to spots in the offensive zone first. He's always well positioned. Somehow always open in the slot, which is just, again, makes no sense given his skating ability. That he just reads the game so well. His two-way games refined as well. Scored, 100 points as a rookie this season in the WHL. I know it's the Prince George Cougars. I know it's a good team. Still, a rookie forced his way onto the top 6 and scored 100 points. That's worth mentioning. And any other prospect in this situation, I think, would be higher up rankings. But the intelligence, the goal-scoring ability, the two-way game, there's so much to work with here with Parasak. I think he's going to develop into a fantastic player, potentially a second liner. No-brainer here for me at 20th overall. And a good selection by the Isles, and one that makes sense given what they usually go for. Kind of these smart, kind of forechecking wingers. Fits the mold exactly. 21st overall, we have our first major surprise of the draft. We have Cole Hutson going to the Locked On LA Kings podcast. This is high. It's. I was going to say another word. It's daring. But let's talk about it. Cole Hutson at 21st overall. Yeah, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I'm a fan. Like I've been the biggest proponent of Cole Hutson's over at Dobber Prospects this season. I was pushing him pretty early on in our ranking meeting for a final ranking this season. I wanted him in at 32nd overall, but he slipped down to 40th. But yeah, he's super intelligent, and there's a lot of skill there too. He's not as dynamic as Lane Hutson is, but a really intelligent offensive creator. One of the best players in this draft class at getting into the offensive zone with possession and creating from that zone entry. Just really, really integral to the NTDP's offensive success over the course of the season. And he's shown so brightly at the U18 World Championships. He was the highest producing draft eligible player, period. Not just among blue liners, among all skaters.
Yeah.
And while production is one thing, and it was a small sample size tournament and everything, and there are definitely questions with development. Like, he's going to have to really work on his defensive impact. He's going to have to work on his skating and his pivots, and there's a lot of things to refine. But the runway with him, with the foundation of hockey mind and intelligence, is not too dissimilar to a guy like Tarek Parasak, who we just covered, right? Of like a high IQ, creative, skilled player whose skating needs some work and the habits need some work, but the foundation for an intriguing NHLer is certainly there, and LA would be an awesome place for him to land. There wouldn't be pressure for him to become like the next big thing on defense. They already have Grant Clark coming in at the moment, and I think this is a very fun swing. I wouldn't be making it this early, but I like that it happened.
I really do as well. I think short Kings deserve a chance, and Cole Hutson's definitely in that mold. That's our first segment done. We'll get into our second segment. We'll look at picks 22 through 30 through 27. Before that, a quick word from our sponsors at FanDuel.
Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, the Stanley Cup Finals, and far more. And you can bet on it all with FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in free bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 that you can bet on everything from Finals MVP to spreads and player props, over and unders, and even same-game parlays, which are especially exciting in playoff time. And nothing's more exciting in playoff time than finals time. The Edmonton Oilers currently have their backs against the wall against the Florida Panthers, but are fighting back, trying to stay alive, led by Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and you can bet on that with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Alrighty, so let's move on to picks 22 through 27 in the Locked On NHL mock draft. We'll react to who our team selected here through picks 22 through 27. Let's start off with the 22nd overall pick. The Locked On Nashville Predators podcast selects Cole Baudouin, a big center out of the Barrie Colts in the OHL. To describe his game bluntly, I mean, this is a prospect who excels on retrievals, excels along the boards, is one of the hardest workers in the NHL draft, if not the hardest worker. He can squat 400 pounds. No, it's deadlift. He can deadlift 400 pounds. So we're talking about a very, very strong physical player. But he has a skill. Yeah, athletic for sure. But he also has some soft skill. I mean, I like his ability to get off the boards into the slot for offensive chances. He's got a great shot in tight, really good net front presence. Great defensively. There's a lot of value here in Cole Baudouin. 22nd makes a lot of sense based on what NHL teams value and like in prospects. He crushed the combine, did really good there as well. This is a prospect who is definitely in the eye of a lot of contenders, and Nashville's trying to get themselves back into that contention spot. I think this is a great, great fit for Cole Baudouin in terms of his profile. At 23rd overall, though, I think we have the best fit of this mock draft so far. Talk me through the selection here for Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs, who selected EJ Emery, a defenseman out of the USNTDP. Talk me through why this is such a good fit.
I mean, the Maple Leafs have been incredibly vocal about their desire to add grit, physicality, and defensive solidity to their lineup, and especially in their blue line to prep themselves for the NHL playoff environment. And EJ Emery fits that bill perfectly. He's the best rush defender in this entire draft class. He's a good skater. He gets around the ice really well. He plays with physicality, but doesn't go and chase hits. He's very composed in his rush defending. He reads rush situations incredibly well and precisely. His anticipation in those situations is also second to none. The cycle defending is also a strength. It's not quite as massive a strength as the rush defending is with EJ Emery, but there's definitely room for improvement. We've been looking to see a bit more offensive impact from him over the course of this season, which hasn't quite popped yet. We only saw glimpses of that at the U18 Worlds, where he went almost a point a game while playing on a pairing with Cole Hutson. But there's a lot to like in his profile. He moves well, he defends well, he plays with physicality and grit. He's going to be a good playoff performer, and he'll be able to eat reliable minutes, which is what the Maple Leafs are looking for. And they spent their last couple draft picks on forwards, so going for a really big, like 6'3", 200+ pound defenseman who's also a bit of an athletic freak in this slot makes a ton of sense.
Absolutely. That brings us to pick number 24. We've got the Locked On Colorado Avalanche selecting here 24th, and they have selected Sacha Boisvert of the Muskegon Lumberjacks in the USHL. Boisvert is a Quebec-born prospect who is pretty big. I mean, 6'2", 200 pounds. He's got a big frame on him, and he uses it extremely well. That's the main standout for me is that Boisvert, the more the season's gone on, the more I've seen, like, okay, this is a real power forward. His ability to drop the shoulder, to cut across defenders or cut through them or just barrel through them straight up brings a lot of upside to his offensive game. He's a prospect who doesn't shy away from physical play. He's really responsible and projectable defensively as well. He's got one of the best shots in the draft, a real whippy release that explodes off his stick either on the wrist or the snapper, the backhand. He's got a great versatility to his goal scoring game as well. I don't think this is necessarily a good playmaker. I want to say he's a prospect who I would qualify as really kind of a play connector. He's a lot more of a finisher and net driver, but the defensive upside gives him a safe floor as well. Even if the playmaking doesn't turn into something even average, I think that overall, there's just so much to work with here with Boisvert in terms of goal scoring and defensive foundations. At 25th, we have the Ottawa Senators selecting again with Boston's 25th pick in the draft. And the Locked On Senators podcast selected Charlie Elick, a big right-handed defenseman out of the Brandon Wheat Kings. So Ottawa really solidifies their defense core here with their selections in the mock draft. Their first selection of the draft was a 7th overall with their own pick. They went with Sam Dickinson. Now they're going right D and Charlie Elick, a player of a similar mold to Dickinson as well. Big, physical, mobile, aggressive, in-your-face type of defenseman with a decent breakout skill as well. He's able to make passes out of his zone pretty well as well, right?
Certainly. There's a lot to like with Alec in terms of combining that defensive aggression and also being able to kind of fall back into a more composed defensive type of role. Like we saw him play in the WHL with a lot more chaos and aggression and stepping up, taking risks defensively, maybe not chasing hits necessarily, but being aggressive and smothering play into the boards. And then at the U18 World Championships, he was very much more of like a positionally sound defender. He was patrolling the slot mainly rather than going out and meeting players at the blue line. He was allowing them to come in and then smothering into the boards well into the defensive zone. And he played both roles very well, which shows to his adaptability on the ice. Offensively, the ceiling isn't the highest in the world, but he's a decent enough distributor and passer. He has a heavy shot. There's a lot to like in this player. And if you're going for a guy in the mold of like a Braden Schneider, who's been playing really good second pairing minutes for the New York Rangers in playoff environments, Charlie Elick is your guy in this range.
For sure. And that brings us to 26 overall. And the Locked On Canadiens selecting again, this time with Winnipeg's selection. And the Locked On Canadiens with their second pick of the draft go for Michael Hage of the Chicago Steel. I love this selection. I have Michael Hage a full 10 spots ahead of where he got picked here. I'm a big fan of his game. Fluid, mobile center who plays a really kind of north-south game on the puck. He's able to deke through opponents really well. Fantastic hands, great shot, great playmaking ability. This season, he started exploring a lot more his defensive side, getting more comfortable making plays defensively, getting into the right spots defensively. He's a pretty complete offensive package with really, really good foundations defensively to kind of uplift his game. I want to see a bit more consistency and a bit more energy in his game off the puck, but on the puck, he's one of the most fluid transitioners in the draft and really, really interesting here for Montreal at 26 overall. I love this pick. Again, 10 spots below. Yeah, 10 spots below where I have him ranked. So I'm a big fan of Hage's game. Wow. You have it 14? Wow.
I'm a big fan.
Same range for sure. At 27th overall here to close off our second segment, we've got the Carolina Hurricanes selecting, and they go for Sam O'Reilly, a center out of the London Knights in the OHL. Played some wing as well, but he projects a lot more of as a center. He's a prospect who I predicted will likely go in the late first round on draft day. So this is exactly where I think he could end up. Carolina's a decent fit. I think there's a couple of prospects he might prefer to him, but in terms of the fit here with Carolina, like the defensive game, the composure, the awareness in O'Reilly's game is really what stands out. He's an incredibly intelligent center who plays a physical game, gets into the right spots, makes really good defensive plays. I think he's got everything that NHL teams look for, especially in the kind of contender kind of range, right?
Absolutely. And he definitely has boom potential as a D+1 as well in like the Easton Cowan mold. Similarly to Cowan, he was stuck in a middle six role with London this season, like Cowan was last year. and his offensive opportunities were limited as a result. But with what he was given, he did the very most he could. On top of being a fantastic defensive impact for such a dominant team, he was getting involved offensively. He's a real facilitator in the offensive zone. He creates space for his line mates and makes their lives easier. I could see him really pop off with a 100+ point season as a D+1 in London. And I know a lot of people in the public scouting community are of the same mind that this is a guy who could really, really like pop off next season. So in that sense, it's a very Carolina type of draft pick in terms of making a bet on the value being a lot higher in a year's time than it was on draft day.
For sure. And that's our second segment done. We'll get into the final stretch of the mock draft. Picks 28 through 32 are coming up in just a sec. Just before, a quick word from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. Alrighty, so we've reached the final stretch of the official 2024 NHL mock draft of Locked On of the Locked On NHL channel. We'll talk about picks 28 through 32 here, starting off with the pick that Calgary got from Vancouver just recently at the deadline there. I believe for Chris Tanev, right? Unless I'm wrong.
No. Elias Lindholm. Tanev went to Dallas.
That's right. The Elias Lindholm selection. So we'll get into it right now here with the selection that Vancouver got from that pick. And it's Teddy Stiga at 28th overall to the Calgary Flames here. Fantastic selection. Another prospect we're both pretty big fans of. Talk me through Stiga's game and what makes him so interesting.
He's a rock star. He's awesome. He's really skilled, has a very high motor with the puck on his stick. He's a fantastic facilitator and play connector in the offensive zone. He makes his teammates significantly better and makes their lives easier. We have him ranked at 20th overall over other prospects, and we've been getting higher and higher on him as the season has progressed. He was a big part of the reason that Cole Hutson scored the amount of goals that he did this season. And he brings so much to the table. He's a solid defensive player. The high motor is awesome. He's a bit undersized at 5'10", 178, but the way he plays compensates for that lack of size fantastically. He's super combative. He's a great playmaker, constantly getting pucks towards the slot and high danger areas, and he has a lot of dynamism and puck skills to support that playmaking game. And he's also a really good goal scorer. His goal scoring goes a little bit undervalued and under-talked about, but it's also a real area of strength, not because of particularly strong shooting mechanics, but great habits to support the goal scoring. He's a ton of fun. I don't think you can count 4 or 5 players that I've had more fun watching this season than Teddy Stiga.
Yep. Absolutely. The combination of energy and skill is just really, really interesting. 29th overall, we have the Dallas Stars picking, and this is the most Dallas Stars selection I can think of. The Dallas Stars go for Harrison Brunick here at 29th overall in our Locked On NHL mock draft. Harrison Brunick is a big right-handed defenseman out of Kamloops Blazers in the WHL. There was a bit of a scare at the Combine. People thought that, I don't know why this rumor started, but somehow it got out that apparently he got measured at 5'10" only. He's not 5'10", and Scott Wheeler righted that ship pretty quickly. He's 6'2.5", 197 pounds, I believe, something like that.
96.
96. Oh, so close.
You're so far off, my friend. I had to edit and correct that.
Absolutely. But yeah, just big, rangy, mobile. He plays big as well. I like the physical game. I like his ability to kind of get in your face. He's dropped the gloves a couple times this season as well. A really interesting kind of physical player, but what really impressed me and the reason I like him more than the kind of usual mold of big physical right-handed defenseman is the sneaky skill in his game. You can't tell if you look at the scoreboard. He only scored 21 points in 41 games this season with Kamloops. But if you watch his game in detail, this kid can deke. He's got really great hands. And he's not afraid to use him. He'll beat a wave on the. He'll beat a forechecker at the blue line. Just kind of swim past him really easily, and he doesn't stop there. I like that he eats up ice after his deke. He doesn't stop when he sees ice in front of him. He grabs it, takes a shot, makes a pass. I like the dare in this game. I think that's going to be the separator for me with Brunick regarding this type of defenseman. I'm often not a big fan of this type of defenseman, usually because they are effective at what they do, but they're kind of limited offensively. With Brunick, I don't really see as much limitation offensively. I see some upside here. So I'm pretty interested in what Brunick becomes. And again, he's the most Dallas Stars pick I can think of. At 30th overall, now we go to the New York Rangers. Locked On Rangers picks Dean Letourneau at 30th overall. And again, I think this is one of the most fitting picks we can think of here for the New York Rangers. Talk me through the fit with Letourneau, what we see as kind of the upside for him, and why he's so interesting here at 30th overall.
It's the upside. He's a long-term project, and I mean, the New York Rangers have no haste in needing to draft a player and develop them within the next 2 or 3 years. They're already a fantastic team. They can take the risk and the swing and the patience that it will take to develop Dean Letourneau. He was playing in Canada's high school circuit this season with St. Andrews College, and he's off to Boston College next season, which is going to be a big jump in competition. And he's a power forward, and he's an improviser. He's 6'6", 214 pounds. He's absolutely massive. A really good puck handler to boot. Is a good goal scorer from in tight. Gets really quick elevation on the puck from the goal mouth. And he has some really underrated playmaking ability on top of that. He only played 2 games at the USHL level this season over the Christmas break, and he looked decent enough in those games. But it's the ability to absolutely take over the games at the high school level that have made him so intriguing. And he could be the first Canadian high school player selected in the first round in a long, long time.
Absolutely. That's what really makes him so interesting is it's the combination of size and skill, and he's decently mobile as well for his size. He doesn't have as much awkwardness to his game as I thought earlier on in the year. When I started watching him a bit more, I saw a bit more coordination, which is what I look for in big guys. At 31st overall, now we're going to go with the order and the way it is right now. I mean, it's 3-1 in the series right now for Florida, so we'll assume they're picking last. We might be wrong, but we'll see. The Anaheim Ducks with a pick from the Edmonton Oilers here at the Locked On NHL mock draft select Andrew Basha with their 31st pick. He's a left wing, played for the Medicine Hat Tigers this year. I was extremely impressed with his game as the season went on, especially as Caden Lindstrom was out with injury. Basha took control of that Medicine Hat team and really made a difference for his organization. Last year, he was very much a checking forward, very much your forechecker, kind of speedy buzzsaw type of player who just makes life very difficult for defensemen as they try to break out the puck. Because one of the things I look for in forecheckers is edge work, actually, because your ability to shift on your edges extremely quickly to stay in a defender's face is so important. That's why slower or less kind of agile players tend to struggle on the forecheck. That's Basha's strengths, and that's been the case since the last year. But this year, we saw a lot more of what he can do on the puck. He's got these little slip passes that he plays all the time off the boards. Really good at cutting back against pressure and finding a trailer. He's got a whippy shot in motion, which blends really well with his high-end speed. Bash is one of the paciest prospects in the draft as well. Great edge work, great top speed, really powerful as well. There's just so much to love here. I think he should have gone much higher than this, but Anaheim's going to be laughing their way to the bank here, selecting Andrew Basha at 31st overall. And now to close things off, let's talk about the 32nd pick of the draft. The Philadelphia Flyers with the Florida Panthers selection select Ryder Ritchie of the Prince Albert Raiders in the WHL. Talk me through his game, what we've seen from him this season, and what are kind of the concerns with him? Because this is exactly where he ended up on our final board, right?
It is indeed. He's a 6 foot, 177-pound right winger who played with the Prince Albert Raiders this season, where he didn't have a bunch of support, and he was mainly tasked with being an offensive driver, which is not his game. He's a really skilled complementary piece offensively. He can score goals. He's a really good puck handler. He's a solid enough playmaker as well, but he's at his best when he's not the primary focus on a line, and he's shown very brightly at the U18 World Championships with Team Canada in a bottom 6 capacity, and he was one of their top point scorers beyond the first line. I think he scored like 4 goals and 8 points in 7 games or something along those lines. Very strong tournament for Ryder Ritchie, and he was able to show what he's able to do when he's afforded the space and the time that playing with players that are at his level and also bring their own fair of strengths to the table. He was really great in that tournament. He's also young for the draft class. He's a player that I think could also really improve his level of play next season. He's going to need some
Yeah.
development. He's going to need some time, 3 to 4 years. But you could get a top 6 complementary, high skill offensive piece out of Ryder Ritchie, especially if you're patient with his development.
For sure. I think the main issue for me with Richie is the kind of issues with his skating habits. This is a player who often tends to plant his feet in transition, who struggles to kind of stay on his outside edges and use kind of crossovers to get around the ice. He's very much a get the puck, plant your feet, kind of deke around a bit, find an opening, take a shot. That needs some work for sure, but I think the Flyers can afford a bit more time. There's no rush really to kind of develop prospects. They've got time to kind of work with Richie, kind of improve these areas of his game. I think Richie does need a hands-on approach, though. If the Flyers are thinking of having dinner with him once a month and calling it development, he's not going to develop into something really interesting. But the team with a hands-on approach and the right mindset with their prospects could turn Richie into a really good second liner. I think there's upside here. But that's our episode done. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the mock draft, if you like what we've been talking about, and you like prospects overall, like and subscribe. Takes a moment of your time. Leave us a comment letting us know what you want us to talk about next, what you think of the episode, what you think of the prospect that your team selected. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rating and review, and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports on YouTube's first 24/7 sports channel. And make sure to tune in for our next shows. Our next show is going to be our breakdown of Dobber Prospects final top 32. Really exciting stuff. So stay tuned for that coming up tomorrow. This has been Hadi Kalakash, Director of North American Scouting for Dobber Prospects, with Sebastian High, Director of European Scouting and Head Scout for Dobber Prospects. And we hope you tune in next time.